What's happening, viewers? This is actually the first RuneScape video I have made since my old YouTube channel about 10 years ago. I noticed there hasn't been another updated Corporeal Beast guide in a while, so I figured it's about time to do one. This is going to be a full in-depth guide that's going to cover all bases and all possible variables in relation to the Corporeal Beast. Everything that has come up since its release, including the most effective tactics available and items in question, will be compacted into this guide. That way nothing is missed, so you'll get the maximum performance and rewards for your time invested into doing the Corporeal Beast. I hope I won't bore you too much with the talking, but doing so is needed to map out all possible details that will make everything all come together nicely. So, let's get started. First of all, in terms of requirements for fighting the Corporeal Beast, the only thing you really need to do is to complete the Summer's End quest. Once the quest is complete, you can enter the Corporeal Beast lair to fight it again. Now getting into the Corporeal Beast stats, it is level 785, it has 100,000 life points and is also aggressive when a player moves within its proximity. It has a range of buffs including an immunity to being stunned, as well as having a thick hide, giving it 50% damage resistance to all weapons except spears. It can instantly devour any summoning familiar, so bringing a Beast of Burden or a legendary pet using Beast of Burden pouch is ill-advised, as it will die long before you can actually use it. The Corporeal Beast can also summon a Dark Energy Core to attack and siphon health from players. Although I haven't listed it here, its attacks are also very accurate. However, it does have a few notable debuffs, including its inability to be immune to poison, stat drain or deflect damage. Its max hit is 4,500, has an accuracy of 1694, as well as armor, and although melee weapons, specifically spear weapons, is the most appropriate to use, the Corporeal Beast is not weak to any style. While this doesn't seem important, I thought I would add it regardless. I want to talk about the unique or tertiary drops for the Corporeal Beast. All sigils have a 1 out of 512 chance of dropping, but a specific sigil has a 1 out of 2,560 chance, except for the spectral sigil. Its drop rate has been halved. Its Holy Elixir drop has a 3 out of 512 chance, and a Spirit Shield has a 1 out of 64. It is also probably the best source for blue charms in the game, which are vital when going for the virtual level 120 or 200 million experience in summoning. The Corporeal Bone Drop that unlocks the Corporeal Puppy Pet has a 1 out of 2,500 drop rate with a threshold of 500. I should also mention that obtaining all these drops once will unlock the Dark Core title. I just want to point out that if you're low to mid level, you're probably going to struggle a lot with this, because while the Corporeal Beast is old content, it has only had one major nerf to it lately, and that's its stomp ability that was removed. So I will recommend that you have at least level 90 plus in attack, strength, defense and magic. If you're wondering why magic, it's because your magic defense does apply as well, since you'll be taking heavy magic damage. You could also have a high range, but the range damage dealt to you is negligible. It's not really an issue. You will want to have 95 prayer for curses, which we will talk more about shortly, and at least 96 herb lore for overloads. Lastly, you must have level 70 plus Invention and have the Oldak Coil unlocked if you want to effectively AFK the Corporeal Beast, but we'll talk more about that in a second. While these skill levels are not required, they are highly recommended, otherwise you will not be able to kill effectively and you'll most likely end up banking a lot, making away with maybe less than 15 kills per hour. Anyways, moving on. The Oldak Coil is the magic equivalent of a dwarf multi-cannon, which uses one inventory space instead of 4. When placed, it uses up to 3x3 tiles of space and can attack all targets within a 9x9 area. It uses cannonballs as ammo. I should also mention that you have to manually reload it every time it runs out of cannonballs. However, if you have the auto reload ability unlocked from the Artisan's workshop, then you can just leave the cannon placed without having to top it up, which lasts around 25 minutes before jamming. If you don't have a lot of time or patience to get the required respect in the Artisan's workshop, then it will make AFKing a lot more difficult. I will leave a link in the description to the RuneScape wiki page for an Artisan workshop if you're not sure what to do and you want to get the abilities before proceeding with the guide. Moving on, we're looking at the inventory and equipment setup, which I will show you for both low costs and high costs, being high costs having more endurance and making AFK much more easier. If you're going for a low cost setup, you may very well have to bank a few times if you run short of food. First off, our inventory consists of 2 Super War Master potions, which will be our combat boosts if overloads are unavailable to you. We also have 4 Super Restore flasks, which will be our main source of prayer, 4 Saradomin flasks, which will aid in healing without losing adrenaline, 20 notepaper for regen bracelets, however you can bring as many as you like, especially if you're going to be noting all the battle staffs. Enhanced Excalibur will be another aid in healing, the Oldak Coil obviously, and 2000 cannonballs for ammo. 10 sharks or whatever food you can get your hands on, although I strongly recommend avoiding any food that heals less than shark, and lastly a games necklace to teleport. For our equipment, we have a full set of bandos, including the helm, chestplate, tassets and boots. For our weapon, I'm using the Master's War Spear, which is the next best thing behind the Vesta's War Spear. Also have an Amulet of Fury, but if you have a Blood Amulet of Fury you can use that instead for them extra heals. I'm bringing the Leviathan ring, which you can buy or make if you're that far into ports. You can swap this out for an Asylum Surgeon's ring or a Ring of Vigor, it's up to you. Also from ports I have a Reef Walker's cape, but if you have the Tazar melee cape from the Fight Kiln, that will probably be better. Lastly, we have a Scrimshaw of Vampirism, which will be great for boosts and healing. For the perks, most of these are relatively cheap to obtain and will offer a significant boost in DPS and defense. If you're not sure how to make the perks, I will add a link in the description to the wiki page surrounding them. For this whole setup, it is probably the least advised considering it will be a lot less AFK. However, it all comes down to what you can afford or what you're willing to spend money on to invest in high level equipment. If I was to average all of this equipment, it would probably come to at least 12 mil. For this setup, we have a lot to go over. So if you're running with the low cost setup, I suggest skipping to the next part of the video. To go over our inventory first, we have 2 Supreme Overload salves, 3 Super Prayer flasks which you can swap out for Super Restores if you don't have the patience to grind within Bone Meal. We have a Weapon Poison Flask Double Plus, which will not only last the full hour but will be a nice boost in DPS. The Enhanced Excalibur, which will be a support healing item, as well as the Ancient Elven Ritual Shard, which I'll talk more about soon when we go over prayer setup. 2000 cannonballs for ammo, 20 notepaper, once again you can bring as much as you like. Now with the recent update, we can now make alloy armor spikes through smithing by using 1000 regular spikes with a concentrated alloy bar, which also requires 99 smithing. When activated, they deal typeless damage based on the player's current smithing level. If using a shield, they deal double damage and 50% more if using a defender. Alloy armor spikes, however, have a special effect which has a 10% chance to activate, dealing 10 times their base typeless damage, upwards of 1k. Even if it doesn't sound like a lot, it actually really is if you factor in your DPS and the amount of times it could activate. It could stack another few kills every hour. I also have Dreadnips, which I'll go over more detail soon, and 1 Blue Charm, which I use as a preset based upon the abundance I get from the Corporeal beast. Lastly, for more support healing, we have 3 Saradomin Brew flasks and 6 Sailfish soups. But again, you can use whatever food you feel comfortable using, even rocktails are fine. And of course the Oldak Coil. I leave 5 spaces open for drops, but you can fill them with more food or potions if you really want to. The inventory setup is more of a guideline, but you can set yours up any way you choose. Moving on to the equipment, I'm using a custom fit spiked trim masterwork set, including the helm, plate body, plate legs and boots. If you don't have access to masterwork, you can downgrade to Malevolent or Torva. Trim Masterwork on the other hand has an exceptionally good bonus effect that reduces damage up to 30, 40 and 50% depending on the amount of pieces that are worn. In this case 40% for this setup. The remaining damage is then converted into a 5-hit bleed that is evenly split by 20%. Why this works so well is that using this effect in unison with the Scrimshaw of Vampirism and the Vampirism aura, you pretty much recover faster than the Masterwork's ability to stall damage. I want to clarify that this won't make you invincible, but you spend a lot less time at low health. As I said, the cost of trim masterwork is quite high, so if you don't have that kind of money, regular masterwork or malevolent will do fine. Next we have a superior Vesta Spear, which is currently the best weapon available to use against the Corporeal beast. We also have Cinderbane gloves for that extra poison stack. I'm using the Reaper's necklace, which offers more DPS than the Amulet of Souls, but if you prefer the extra 10% boost using deflect curses, that's also fine. In the cape slot, the max or the completionist cape will be the best choice. For the ring slot, I'm using the Luck of the Dwarves, but in my personal opinion, the Ring of Death is much better. But if you want that marginal increase to sigil drops, or the chance of getting a Hazelmere's signet ring, then use the Luck of the Dwarves instead. In my ammo slot, I have the Tiranwin Quiver 4, which gives us a little prayer boost, and lastly, I'm using the superior Scrimshaw Vampirism. But if you haven't made it that far into ports, then you can stick with the tradable one instead. Onto the perks. These are highly expensive, but also strongly recommended. Having Aftershock 3 and Precise 5 on your spear will add a nice amount of DPS. Having Enhanced Devoted on your armor is extremely good, given the fact it pretty much is devotion without adrenaline cost. Also, I should mention that Devoted does not stack with it, but instead the effect activates separately, having the inferior one giving that extra chance of activating either. Overall, increasing chances of deflect curses protecting more damage. Impatient helps with the extra adrenaline gain, and Crystal Shield 3 offers temporary life points in place of damage, which has a chance to activate when receiving incoming damage. Crackling 3 adds passive damage, and Biting 3 increases critical hit chance. However, I recommend avoiding Biting 3 unless you're prepared to sink millions into disassembling noxious weapons. Now that will be it for all the setups, but before we move on to ability bar setup and prayer and such, there are just a few more things that I want to address. The first thing I want to address is the max/completionist capes and their abilities to consume 3 different skill capes for their perks. If you have this, I strongly suggest using these 3 skill capes, the first being Constitution, which will provide a little more health, the Strength cape, which will provide a fraction of extra DPS, and the Defense cape that will revive you by 25% health if you die. It has infinite uses, but still has the 1 hour cooldown. You can swap out the Strength cape or the Constitution cape for an Attack cape, which will slow the decay of your degradable items, but that is completely up to you. The next thing I want to address is unlocking these little critters, which help a lot in terms of DPS. They are unlocked through the Dominion Tower, which is a minigame that allows you to fight quest bosses you have killed in the past. Unlocking them can be tedious and painful, requiring 450 kill count and spectating another match. Depending on how fast you are at killing quest bosses, this shouldn't take longer than a day, and if you're struggling to find someone to spectate even on a busy world, just ask one of your friends or clanmates to start one up for you, and leave once you have the requirement ticked off. Once they are unlocked, you are awarded 500 Dreadnips for free, and 500 more for every 25 kills in the future. They are a lot easier to grind, getting up to 2,000 to 4,000 Dreadnips per hour, depending on how skilled you are at killing quest bosses. In terms of their capabilities, they are useful for DPS and poisoning capabilities. Although they can stun, it doesn't work with the Corporeal beast. They are invincible by all means and will only leave if the player moves too far away, the current target dies, or if the 45-second timer depletes. What also makes them wonderful is they stack in your inventory and can also change combat styles by right-clicking them. Now this probably won't apply to most people given that the Zara's God Sword costs upwards of 1 billion GP, but if you do have one of these, make sure you bring it along because it will exponentially increase the kill count and kill speed depending on how often you use it. The special ability it uses drains 50% adrenaline but summons a black hole at the center of your feet, boosting melee damage and dealing ability damage to your target if they are standing on the black hole. You can switch to this weapon to activate its effect and then switch back to your spear as the effect still remains. Another thing you shouldn't do is use the Berserk while the black hole is still in effect, otherwise the Berserk will override it. Getting into the more intricate part of the guide, we need to make sure some settings are set right. First of all, go into your combat settings and make sure that Revolution is active. You can choose full manual, but you're essentially forfeiting your ability to AFK. After that, make sure that your basic abilities are set to auto-activate and also your threshold abilities are ticked as well. The next thing you want to do is ensure that under your action bar settings you tick automatically trigger regenerate. After you've killed the corporeal beast, any remaining adrenaline will be converted into health. This ability used to be triggered manually, but now you can have it set to automatically trigger. So this is the setup I have for my ability bar. I have my thresholds at the start so they take priority over basics when sufficient adrenaline is gained. You can set sacrifice anywhere you want, but I think it's fine where it is. Also, if you have any of the upgraded abilities like mutated fury, be sure to set that. Another thing is that if you want to do more damage output, you can swap out debilitate for blood tendrils, but that's entirely up to you. Now I know there's a lot to read here, and that most of you know exactly how these function, but for the sake of this being an in-depth guide, I'm going to go over them anyway. So if you don't want to listen, then you can simply skip to the next part. First of all, I want to talk about standard prayer as opposed to having ancient curses. The standard prayer is far more inferior and should not be used. If you have the prayer level, I suggest you go and complete the Temple at Sincerest quest to unlock curses, as standard prayers are going to be far less effective. So for the corporeal beast, what you definitely want active is either protect or deflect melee as your overhead. Do not use soul split unless you're proficient at prayer flicking, because corporeal beast deals rapidly high magic damage and soul split just won't be enough to heal. But don't worry, as there are other healing methods like the Scrimshaw, Excalibur and Auras to fill that void. For your passive prayer, use Piety if on your standard, or Turmoil if using curses. Turmoil has much more superior effects which drain the combat stats of the enemy but increase yours too while growing stronger over time. Now if you're very rich and you have brought the Praeasal Codex or earned it from the next AOD boss fight and used it to unlock Malevolence, then you should use this instead, as it is pretty much Turmoil on steroids. I think the Praeasal Codex at the moment is roughly around 500 mil. Lastly, I want to talk about the Ancient Elven Ritual Shard. This thing is pretty much the answer to the prayer version of the Enhanced Excalibur. It restores 37.5% of your total prayer level over the course of 30 seconds. It also has unlimited uses and does not cost anything to maintain, as it does not use charges nor does it degrade. It has a 5-minute cooldown and does not work with the Holy Wrench or the Reverence Aura, which doesn't really matter because the Corporeal Beast requires neither. At this point it costs around 12 million GP, but that is also subject to change. If you don't have it, I recommend getting one because they save you a lot of money in banking and prayer restoring costs. I just want to touch base on using quick prayers, because even with the Corporeal Beast at the fastest setting, it is still a good amount of time before the next one respawns. During this time, you want to quickly flick prayer off so you don't waste it. To do this, you want to activate your quick prayer selection by right clicking your prayer icon on the interface. Select number 1 and then click on the desired prayers. Also, by right clicking the icon, you can select the other 2 quick prayer numbers. This way you can turn prayers off and on with a single click of the icon, saving you from wasting excess prayer after each kill. This is relatively simple considering Vampirism is your best bet, which heals you by a fraction of the damage you deal. However, if this is on cooldown, your best bet would be to use Brawler, which will increase DPS, or Penance, which will effectively eliminate the need for prayer potions. In that case, you should exchange your prayer restoring options for more healing items. Having all 5 is good because when you have used at least 4 of them, the first one, assuming Vampirism, will have finished its cooldown. Make sure to visit Solomon's store and spend your loyalty points if you haven't got them yet. Honestly, if you have one of these, it will make the trip so much easier, since you won't be picking up the loot after every kill. Just be sure not to add a Beast of Burden pouch, otherwise it will get eaten. Use legendary pets only for their scavenge ability when fighting the Corporeal Beast. Also, you will want to turn off the bones and ashes in its interface settings, otherwise it will constantly pick up the ashes, making it overly frustrating. The last thing I want to talk about is Death's Door before we get into some action. If you do frequent bossing, you probably know a lot about Death's Door and what he has to offer. If you can get the chance to acquire these abilities, it will make fighting the Corporeal Beast even more manageable, especially with the reduced costs on instancing and the increased amount you heal if you're not paying attention at the time your life points reach 0. Also, the aura refresh helps if you take comfort in using the vampirism aura a lot. Okay, hopefully you're all still with me. Other than that, so now that we have covered absolutely everything 2019 has to offer for the Corporeal Beast, now we can get into the fight. Start off by teleporting via the Games Necklace or the Max Skill portal and follow the path until you reach the entrance. Next, you will want to pot up and activate your scrimshaws and auras and check to make sure you have everything. When you're ready, start up an instance and be sure to set max players to 1 and spawn speed to fastest. You can set the protection to whatever you want. When you're ready, start and then enter the fight. When it starts, you'll have time to set up your coil and get into position. I've set an arrow for where you need to stand when setting up your coil. It is best and important that you're standing in the spot as it will be the most effective way to handle the Corporeal Beast and its dark cores that it spits out. After that, activate your quick curses and your dreadnips if you have them, and you can sit back and relax. Only healing when you need to or restore prayer when it gets low. You can also flick your prayers on and off after each kill to save your prayer. Remember, if you haven't got the upgrades from the Artisan workshop, then you will need to keep topping up your Oldak coil after every 30 or 90 shots. If you leave your area while it is jammed, you will have to rebuild one, but if you die you can reclaim one from the Lodian for free. He is located close to the entrance of the Dwarven Mine, south of the Ice Mountain, and teleporting to Falador Lodestone is a pretty fast way to get there. So I just wanted to total what I made in the last hour. So I got relatively lucky getting a holy elixir, and I should also mention that you should not need to buy cannonballs since you'll get a lot of them from the Corporeal Beast anyway. Only buy 2,000 if you run out, and it didn't drop any for you. After a while they will build up in your bank and you won't really need to worry about them. So averaging out, the Corporeal Beast is about 4.5 to 5 mil per hour at around 55 to 60 kills per instance. Anyway friends, that will be it for this video, and I hope you have learnt how to deal with the Corporeal Beast in a more effective way to date. If you like this video, be sure to click the subscribe button for more to come. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Peace.